Moving on to the 24th President of the United States, William McKinley. We're going to look at 5 criteria as always: growth, finances, international politics, war and security, and the most important criteria: did they leave the country better or worse than they found it? McKinley comes in, and when we're looking at growth, we have to acknowledge that there was growth. At what cost will be the question we'll kind of be discussing as we proceed. But in terms of growth, McKinley kind of turned toward American imperialism. And we talked about this under Harrison with regards to Hawaii when he kind of looked the other way as Dole had the coup against the Hawaiian monarchy that eventually led to them being annexed under McKinley. That was the first kind of test drive, I think, for the idea of America trying to replicate the European colonial model. McKinley took that to 11, ironically, against the Spanish, who were the model, kind of demonstrating, if anyone was paying attention, the failure of colonialism, the problem of colonialism. The fundamental problem of colonialism is if you occupy a place, but you do not allow that place to become part of your country, to be integrated into your culture, not forced, but to simply say, you are now part of our country, you are an equal to our country, we are now we, not separate. Colonialism is basically taking advantage of other people, making vassal states. Vassal states never are going to be satisfied with being vassal states. They're always going to want to overcome whoever is vassalizing them. They have their own identification, at least in the modern time, once we get to the point where nation states view themselves as nation states. When you're viewing yourself as a nation state, you're never going to want to be subservient to another country. And so that's the failure of colonialism. The idea that you can simply force another country to send you goods, services, without expecting an exchange, an equal exchange, without them eventually overthrowing you and revolting. That's never going to happen. But McKinley wanted to dip his toe into that, and he had an opportunity because the Spanish were collapsing, because colonialism was failing. And so there were opportunities to go to war with the Spanish, to take Cuba, and to take the Philippines. I do not in any way, shape, or form buy the humanitarian argument. I find it completely bogus. If you want to buy the humanitarian argument, you will probably disagree with my assessment of McKinley. All I can say is 200,000 Filipinos died of starvation and cholera because of the Philippine-American War. Don't tell me that the expansion had anything to do with our caring deeply about their wants and needs. Cuba is more arguable, but even that, I don't buy it. America, particularly the American South, had been long calling to conquer Cuba as part of Manifest Destiny. Which brings me to a great comment that was left. And I'm not just saying it's a great comment because it's one of my subscribers, but it was a great comment. And it was challenging me on why I was so harsh on Harrison, but less harsh on Polk. Polk currently, I think, is fourth in the presidential rankings. And what it basically comes down to is this is a this is not a discussion of who is a good person. It's not even a discussion of who is good for the world generally. I maybe when I do at the end, I plan on doing a retrospective where I re-look at all of the numbers, maybe move some people around. So the very last video in this series is me going back to the chart, going, really, does this person belong here or not? And so Polk might get moved down a little bit as I do a retrospective. It's a very good argument that Polk, probably at the time I'm doing Polk, there have been so many bad presidents on either end that maybe he just felt like a breath of fresh air and maybe I did give him too much. On the other hand, if you think about what Polk did for America, not for the world, for America, California, Texas, and negotiating with Great Britain to get the lines that eventually gave us Washington State, like Oregon, all of that was in dispute when he took office, and 4 years later, it was all cleanly resolved. The Mexican-American War, he attempted to purchase the land because Mexico was completely in disarray at that point. They didn't even have a president to negotiate with. Their president was being impeached because he was considering selling the land, if I remember correctly the details. Polk was elected running on the 54-40 fight. I got it wrong before. Maybe I got it right this time. And the Mexican-American War. That was what the American people voted for. That's what they got. I kind of made the same argument about Andrew Jackson. I'm not mad at Andrew Jackson. I'm mad at America. But again, this video series is about the American presidency. And I think that commenter is 1,000% correct that if you're looking at it from that perspective, and that is a valid way to assess presidencies as far as, was this person a good person, a bad person? Did they make America, were they a good moral guidance for America? I think if you did that, then many presidents, both of the Adams, Rutherford B. Hayes, as he mentioned in another comment, would be significantly higher because they were good people with good intentions. But I hate to tell you this because history is awkward. The voters do not always vote for people who are good. They vote for people who they think meet their best interests. And Polk, they believed, would take care of America by conquering to the shore, by conquering the West and taking the West. And he did that. And not only did he do that, luckily for him, California had a ton of gold. So when he took California, the gold rush shortly followed thereafter, and his economy boomed. Was Polk very fortunate in all of these things? Absolutely. Would Polk be a horrible president in other contexts and other times? Absolutely. But for that time and place, that benefited America greatly. It did not benefit the Native American population there. It did not benefit Mexico. It did not benefit anyone else in the world, but it did benefit America. McKinley, on the other hand, I don't see the benefit that came out of many of these decisions on a grand scale, certainly not on the scale of a Polk. But there is growth, so he'll get a little bit of a bonus on terms of growth. The country did grow because we acquired more territory. In terms of finances, I'm not going to be as positive on this as I think other people who are looking at it have been, because I don't think the economy was spectacular. I think it was just so much better than what came before under Cleveland and caused by Harrison with the complete financial collapse in 1893, followed by a second reversion collapse kind of thing, stock market collapse in 1896. I think McKinley came in during a recovery. I don't think his tariff policies in any way benefited. From what I've read, cost of living went up significantly. But because there were some returning jobs because we had been in recession for so long, and because of some things that were not anything to do with him, specifically the Yukon Gold Rush, brought a lot of gold into the economy and brought a lot of things that helped. The electrical grid was being created. There was a lot of research going on during this time. Industrialization was coming. I don't know how much that falls on McKinley. I'm not going to give him a knock on that. He's going to get somewhat positive regards on finances, probably slightly above average in finances, because there was a recovery during his time, but it wasn't a spectacular recovery. It wasn't a boom during his time. And I also wonder how long it would have continued had Roosevelt not come in later, and we'll get to that in a second. In terms of international politics, I'm going to give him not very good marks. I think we ended up going to wars which we didn't need to go into. Spain, while a declining great power, was still a major European power at the time, and these actions entangled us in these international fights that eventually would devolve into World War I. We had been following the Monroe Doctrine successfully, where we were minding our business and keeping Europe out of it. And I think that was the correct approach. We failed to do that for McKinley. The thing I will give him slight credit for is he was negotiating toward getting the Panama Canal finally built, and that did come to fruition under Roosevelt, so I will give him some credit for that. But I think that the Spanish-American War, even though we won it swiftly, at what cost and in what gain? We acquired no states. The Hawaii thing occurred before him, and he just finalized the treaty. The Philippines, again, as I said, 200,000 people died of dysentery and cholera and violence because they were trying to resist our occupation after resisting the Spanish occupation. Cuba, similarly, was probably happy to have us, but I think if McKinley stayed, I don't know that we would have given him independence. I don't know what would have happened had McKinley stuck around rather than Roosevelt, because McKinley did seem intent on this whole colonialism thing. Guam and Puerto Rico are both still territories to this day, not states. Puerto Rican independence and statehood go back and forth, but the the lack of desire to have these countries integrated, I think for racist reasons, is something that needs to be discussed. Similarly, and I should have mentioned this under growth probably, but McKinley was a huge disappointment with regards to civil rights. He came in with, a lot of blacks were optimistic that after Cleveland had pretty much abandoned any pretense, as the Democrats at that time had no interest in doing anything to support blacks, because they were not going to be voting in the South thanks to Jim Crow and mass violence. There was just not any opportunity for them to vote. There was hope when McKinley came in he would try to change that. And then McKinley was willing to embrace a lot of lost cause narratives and really started down the trend that would eventually lead to a number of presidents coming after him who simply let the lost cause narrative be the narrative, who completely abandoned any pretext of ever having restoring civil rights, that caused race relations to become far worse. I can't condemn that enough. Was it better than Cleveland? Probably, but the bar is low. So he started an unnecessary war that led to mass casualties and deaths. I don't buy the pretext that it was for humanitarian reasons. Again, Spain had been in decline. The revolutions could have happened. We could have supported them without, we there. I just don't buy that. So he gets low marks in terms of international politics and war and security for me. The last one is better or worse. I think if McKinley had not been assassinated and Roosevelt had not replaced him and gone in a very different direction, the country would be in a very different place. I guess you could argue because McKinley picked Roosevelt to be his vice president, you should give McKinley some credit for that. I would say McKinley picked him because his first vice president died of a heart attack, and everything that I've been reading, McKinley was not really excited about picking Roosevelt. It was almost as if by picking Roosevelt, he was doing a favor for the New York delegation to get Roosevelt out of the Senate because he was causing problems there, and they would put him in this position where the vice president was considered as someone who really didn't do anything. Roosevelt kind of felt like, oh, this is annoying. I'm going to go to the vice president thing. Maybe I can use it as a stepping stone, but honestly, I have more power where I'm in New York. It just happened McKinley got assassinated, so I'm not even giving him that much credit for that. And I think had Roosevelt not followed him and gone in a completely different direction, we really could have gone down a dark path very quickly. And it's very fortunate that who followed McKinley was Roosevelt. Spoilers, who was a very, very good president in a lot of ways. Not a perfect president, but I think he will be probably rating very highly when I review these. Some inside baseball, whenever I do these rankings, I'm always doing one ahead and then I go back, because I think it's very important when you're looking at a president to look at what they left and how that proceeded before you evaluate them. And McKinley left a mess, and Roosevelt did a remarkable job cleaning up that mess. But he absolutely left a mess. So where does that leave him overall? I think we're looking at a kind of the closest parallel so far, I would say, is Andrew Jackson. You have a president who his term itself wasn't that bad because he kind of inherited a situation that was on the upswing at the time he came in, or at least not on a significant downswing. But he did a lot of things to turn the country in a direction toward its worst instincts. But I'm going to put him slightly below Jackson at number 17, and this is why. At least Andrew Jackson, I think, was selected to do the horrible things that he did. I think McKinley, no one asked him to be an imperialist when he was elected. That's not what he ran on. That was a decision he made in kind of the same way he was reverting back to the spoils system. He was trying to undo a lot of the reforms that came before him. I think McKinley is remembered probably more favorably because of his assassination. People don't want to, people, and because Roosevelt did well after him. But I think 17 between Jackson and Van Buren is a perfect place for him right now.